Hello and welcome to GameSack. It's finally time to dedicate an episode to Sega's very first home gaming console, the SG-1000. Now this wasn't released in North America or many other places for that matter. Anyway, let's start things off with a quick overview of the system itself. The SG-1000 was Sega's first dedicated gaming platform for the home market. It was released at the same time as the SG-1000 computer is based on, the 15th of July, 1983. Yes, this is also the very same day Nintendo released the Famicom. Its main market was in Japan, but it was also released in limited quantities in a few other regions. The console itself has a hardwired controller that looks like a miniature Atari 7800 joystick and also a port for a second controller. I can't imagine anyone enjoying using these controllers very much. You could even expand the SG-1000's capabilities with a keyboard. Most games came on the cartridge format, however Sega console designer Hideki Sato disliked them, saying they looked like little black tombstones. So he came up with the card catcher, which would play Sega My Cards, which held less overall memory. But the size of games back then was already pretty small. The SG-1000 is powered by a Z80A CPU running at a blazing 3.58 MHz. It has a resolution of 256 by 192 pixels with a mind-blowing 16 colors. Up to 32 sprites could be on screen at once. There's no hardware support for background scrolling, it all has to be done in software. The sound consists of 3 exciting square wave channels and 1 noise channel. The redesigned SG-1000 Mark II was released the following year and featured 2 detachable joypads. Overall, it had about 74 officially released games and sold about 1.5 million units. Also, the SG-1000's AV output was limited to RF. I mean, that's just how things were back then. Now, there weren't a whole lot of video games released for the system, so I figured I'd cover them all in a single episode, even some of the unlicensed ones. Now, these games are pretty simple, so it's not like there's a ton to discuss anyway. But I came up with 90 of them to cover, so let's get right into it. We start off with 007 James Bond from Parker Brothers. This one was made for the Othello Multivision clone, but can run on the SG-1000. You start out with James Bond in his submersible car, and you can shoot up and down. You also have limited control over your car, and you can rise in the air or sink below for a very short burst. It's quite difficult. Nothing about this really grabbed me. Next is Bank Panic from Sega. Here, you scroll left and right and line yourself up with 3 doors which all open automatically. You have to shoot the evil criminals, but be careful because you don't want to shoot all of the people who want to give you money for some reason. And a lot of them want to give you money. Button 2 shoots the right gun, button 1 shoots the middle gun, and pressing up or down shoots the left gun. You need to get money from every door to complete the round. It's kind of interesting. This is the Black Onyx, one of the very first RPGs made for the Japanese market. It's a dungeon crawler, and these days it's a bit convoluted to figure out. Still, I like it a bit better than the sequel which we reviewed in the MSX episode, mainly because this one has music, though I imagine it might get a little tiring after a while. The battle system is easy enough to figure out. If you like fighting dudes with no pants, then be sure to play this game as soon as you can. This was one of the very last games to be released for the SG-1000, coming out in 1987. In fact, it was the final game in card format. Here's Bomb Jack. You play as a gentleman who needs to collect all of the bomb icons in any given level whilst avoiding the fiendish enemies. One hit and you die. Fortunately, you can jump pretty high. You can also collect a power-up which kind of works like the big dot in Pac-Man, incapacitating the enemies for a brief time. This is good because the screen quickly fills with enemies. I like this one a lot. The only issue is that the graphics can make it tough to see what things are. Bomberman Special was originally an MSX game. It was brought to the SG-1000 as an unlicensed title, but only in Taiwan. To bring the SG-1000 closer to the MSX in terms of memory, this one requires the Daji RAM extension adapter to expand the RAM by a whopping 8K. As you can see, this is a pretty bad version of Bomberman with ugly visuals and even worse music. The gameplay isn't even done very well. Not recommended. This one is called Borderline. It starts out as kind of a vertical shooter with you in a jeep moving upwards. You can shoot sideways as long as you're moving sideways. Then you get to some areas that don't scroll. Your main mission in these areas is to shoot all of these weird things. You also need to protect yourself from the enemy, of course. These scenes kind of remind me of Dig Dug. Overall, not a bad little shooter. Alright, 6 games down and a few more than that to go. Now, for some reason, there are a ton of games on the SG-1000 that start with the letter C. Let's do this. Here's CISO from Compile. Your goal in this one is to basically wander around, collect all of the fruit, and kill all of the enemies. Do that and you win the stage. There are seesaws, trampolines, and ladders scattered about to help you get around and destroy the bad guys. What can I say? It's not bad, but not great either. Here's Cabbage Patch Kids, originally from Konami. This is another MSX game that was brought to the SG-1000 without a license only in Taiwan. It's basically a simple platformer. At the beginning, you can customize your character. Then you move through screen after screen of minor obstacles. Although you're a Cabbage Patch Kid, touching a cabbage will still kill you dead. It's not an awful game, all things considered. This one's called The Castle. You're a little dude who needs to collect keys to open the same colored doors to advance inside of this diabolical castle. You can also collect other items to help out as well. It's a slight brain teaser to be sure. One button jumps and the other button toggles a slow mode if the game is just too crazy fast for you. This cartridge has an additional 8K of RAM built in. I kinda like this one. I want to keep trying to figure out how to get out of whatever room I'm currently in. Chakin' Pop is originally a game from Taito. You're a Chakin and you need to make your way to the hearts that are in the cages, bomb them, and then escape the level. This is much easier said than done as the enemies are extremely tough to avoid. Even your own shots are tough to avoid and tougher to kill enemies with it. I don't like it. This is Challenge Derby. First, you place your bets on some horses in this Othello multivision game. Then they race and you have no control over them because this is a video game. Why would you want to participate in the actual race? Then you see if you won. No thanks. Champion Baseball. This is a primitive baseball game just like you'd expect. I do appreciate the batter pitcher window on the left side of the screen. Hitting is really tough and fielding is extremely easy. Not much else to say here. Champion Billiards. I like this one. It's basically a primitive game of single-player pool. All you need to do is get all of the balls in the holes. You aim with the cursor and wait until the automatic power gauge at the top of the screen is where you like it. The physics are decent for the console. I also like that there are different tables to play on that you'd never see in real life. Champion Boxing. That's right, you figured it out. The Champion line of games is Sega's sports games for the console, just like the great ones were on the Master System. This is, however, the very first game that Yu Suzuki worked on. The graphics are pretty detailed for the console, but for some reason it's just not as fun as Virtua Fighter 2 or Shenmue or even Enduro Racer. Champion Golf. I can't make heads or tails out of this one. You have a little dude that moves around the border, and that seems to be how you aim. You don't seem to have any control over how hard you hit the ball. There aren't any champions who play this game. Champion Ice Hockey. This is a slow game that I don't feel I have very much, if any, control over. It feels like each player weighs about 350 pounds, and you aim your shot by adjusting an arrow by the goal, which is difficult to do as you're moving. I'd rather play this than Champion Golf, though. Champion Kendo. I can't quite figure out how to play it, much less win at it, but basically you and the other chap are fighting with wooden sticks. At least the music in this one is kinda catchy, I guess. Champion Pro Wrestling. This one has you selecting your moves from a list below you and then executing them. It's not good, at all. In fact, I won my first 2 rounds easily, until I found out that I thought I was controlling the wrong guy. Oops. Still, somehow it's not the worst wrestling game I've ever played. Champion Soccer. This is marginally better than Champion Ice Hockey, but that's not saying a lot. Everything moves in a choppy fashion, and as always, the CPU will absolutely wipe the floor with you, even on the amateur level. Like most of these sports games, it's better played with 2 people who both suck. Champion Tennis. Fortunately, this is the last Champion game on the console. The graphics in this one are absolutely garish. There's very little animation, and for some reason, the server is always at the bottom of the screen. Still, I'd rather play this one than most 8 and 16-bit tennis games because I can actually hit the damn ball sometimes. Imagine being a tennis game and getting wrecked by an SG-1000 game that looks like this. Here's Championship Load Runner, not Champion Load Runner. I've never really understood Load Runner, and as you can imagine, I don't care much for it. This version is no exception. I don't like playing it. But if you do, well, this is the version that only champions are allowed by law to play. Here's Choplifter, one of my favorite games on the Master System. This version, however, is absolute trash. It has limited memory due to it being on a card, but that's not why it fails. Your goal is to fly behind enemy lines with your helicopter and pick up hostages. Then you return them to your base. Collect a certain amount of hostages to clear the stage. Everything here is extremely choppy and the enemies here are relentless. This may have been fun back in the day, but the enemy AI just doesn't hold up anymore. At least there's some parallax scrolling. I've never been able to get past the first area on this one, and I've been trying for years. I hate this game. Hate it! I absolutely love it though, because it's Choplifter, a definite must-own. Circus Charlie is an unlicensed port of a Konami arcade game. It was only released in South Korea and Taiwan. Basically, your mission is to make your way to the right and not touch anything at all, or you die. Your control over Charlie isn't very fluid, so it can be tough until you learn the patterns. I'm impressed with the smooth scrolling, which is something that usually doesn't happen on this console, so that's cool. Congo Bongo is a port of Sega's arcade game which tried to cash in on Donkey Kong. The arcade featured an isometric 3D-ish viewpoint, however this one is straight up 2D, which is fine. Your goal in this one is to simply make your way to the gorilla, that's it. And it's easier said than done as the control is slippery at best. The second part of each round has an overhead-like area. Be careful here, as if you even think about the water, you die. Beat this and do it all again. Overall, this might have entertained the simple minds back in the early 80s, but it doesn't do much for us big-brained, hyper-intelligent fellows of the 2020s. Actually, you know what? It is kind of fun. This is Doki Doki Penguin Land. Your goal is to move your egg to the bottom of the very long screen without breaking it. You can dig holes and drop rocks on enemies, but don't let your egg fall too far. That's the gist of it, and it's a game that I've never really been able to extract much enjoyment from. Other people seem to enjoy this game though. Here's Dragon Wang. This one is almost interesting. It looks like Kung Fu, but it actually plays like a broken-ass cross between Sega's Kung Fu Kid and Black Belt. Both of those are on the Master System. This game would be pretty good if they had spent more than 3 or 4 minutes in designing the actual gameplay. You make your way to an individual, beat him, and he holds a key. And you need all the keys so you can touch the dragon's glorious wang. You jump up to higher levels by pressing down first before pressing up to jump. Sadly, you lose life really fast, and if you die, you lose any keys that you've collected. So you have to do the entire thing on a single life, which is just stupid and ruins it. But the thought of that dragon wang will keep you trying again, and again, and again. This one's called Droll. Basically, you wander back and forth between levels. You can shoot your gun at will, float, and go between levels where you see the little white thing on the floor. I'm not entirely sure what the goal is. I collected this girl and that seemed to be all to do on the level, no exit to go to. Then I got killed by this green alligator. Whoops, no, I guess that transported me to level 2. This one's okay, I guess. Elevator Action is a port by Sega of the Taito arcade game. Basically, you're at the top of a hotel and you need to get to the bottom where your car is so you can go to McDonald's. This is not a well-designed building, so there are many different elevators that you need to take. On your way, you'll shoot people who emerge from their room simply because they exist. I mean, you can be pretty grouchy before you've had your McDonald's. Overall, it's not bad at all, though for some reason, it's not quite as good as Elevator Action Returns on the Saturn. This is Exerion. I covered this game in the MSX episode, and it's pretty much the same here. Shoot down oncoming enemies with a slower double shot or a really fast single shot. However, your fast single shots aren't unlimited. The number under charge indicates how many of those shots you have. Killing an enemy will grant you one more charge. I like what the graphics are attempting with their pseudo forward scrolling and the way it shifts left and right when you move that way. Pretty neat for such a primitive console. This one's pretty fun to play, too. Alright, here's the worst version of Flicky ever made. You need to collect the birds and take them to the top to save them. But watch out for the evil cats that are running around. Throughout each level are objects that you can use to hit the cats with. This version seems extra bouncy and it's difficult to ascend the platforms to avoid the cats. But you can get used to it after a short while. The scrolling is pretty smooth for an SG-1000 game though. Flipper, or Sega Flipper, is a video pinball game. Button 1 controls the left flipper and button 2 controls the right. The D-pad simply pulls the plunger back. As you can imagine, and also clearly see, this isn't very good video pinball. I don't really have anything else to say about this one. Okay, we're making some progress here, I guess. Up next, the most renowned game for the SG-1000. I mean, after Galaga, because that comes first, alphabetically. Look, it's Galaga, also sometimes known as Sega Galaga. What can I say? It's Galaga and it was ported over by Sega. It plays an okay game of Galaga, I guess. I think you're going to want to keep this one turned down pretty low as it gets annoying to your ears, even more so than most other SG-1000 games already do. Otherwise, it's just primitive Galaga. Girl's Garden is one of the most celebrated games on the SG-1000. For one, it was the first game by both Yuji Naka and also Hiroshi Kawaguchi. Yuji Naka, of course, went on to make Sonic the Hedgehog and other stuff. Hiroshi Kawaguchi went on to become one of Sega's most famous musicians, composing the music for arcades such as Space Harrier, Afterburner, Outrun, and many more. Anyway, in this game, you're a girl and you're trying to win the love of a boy by giving him flowers. Aww. You run around and pick up the fully bloomed ones, filling up the flower gauge at the bottom of the screen. Be careful not to pick the dead flowers though, or your gauge decreases. Also, be careful of the tough-to-avoid bears. You can distract them with pots of honey, but you have very few at your disposal. At the top of the screen, you'll see the boy walking towards that other girl. This is basically your timer. Once your flower gauge is full, visit the boy in the house and give him the flowers. This woos him good, and he walks back to you, and you hear wedding music composed by the same musician who composed Sword of Vermilion on the 16-bit Sega Genesis. Then you divorce really quick and go on to the next stage, which features different flowers. Sometimes you even get a challenging stage. You need to jump over all these crazy blocky animals. Yeah, it's pretty blocky. But hey, so is the Super Nintendo's Mode 7, so you have absolutely no choice but to love how this looks. It even has some parallax scrolling, even though it's pretty choppy. I've got to say that this game is pretty inventive, and I like it a lot. Some people actually waste their emotions being offended by this game for having a girl try to woo a guy instead of rescuing him. Come on people, lighten up and enjoy life. Here's Golgo 13. This one places you in a car and you need to shoot out all of the windows on the train in the distance. If you do, then the passenger riding the train hops out and goes the rest of the way on foot. I mean, who wants to take the train when you could just walk instead? Be careful of things that can ricochet your bullets right back at you and kill you. Each level adds a bit of stuff to help make the game a bit tougher. Overall, it's not very exciting. Believe it or not, the NES games are better. GP World is a racing game, surprise surprise. Your goal is to make it around 2 laps of the track in less than the qualifying amount of time. Not great, but I would have enjoyed this as a small child. This would evolve into World Grand Prix on the Master System, and that's being quite generous with the word evolve. Here's Gull Cave from Compile. This is one of the more graphically ambitious games for the SG-1000. It's a horizontal shooter and it even has parallax scrolling. It also has tons of fast-moving sprites all over the place. Unfortunately, these sprites can be tough to avoid. For that reason, you have a power gauge and can take a few hits before you lose a life. You can power up your weapon by collecting the numbers. If you get one you like, then don't get any more numbers or you might regret it. The enemies aren't interesting at all and their patterns are more annoying than anything. Still, like I said, this one's pretty ambitious. It even lets you put in your name on the high score table. Not only that, but it even lets you continue, which was unheard of back then if any of these other games are to be used as examples. Kudos to Compile for the effort. This is Guzzler. It's for the Othello Multivision. You're a little thing that roams the level and you need to put out all of the fires. To do this, you spit water at them. Your water can also be used to kill enemies. There are puddles around to refill yourself, and you can hold 3 water spits when you're full. After the big fires are put out, you clear the level. It's a fun game, but the sound is perhaps one of the more annoying things that you'll ever hear in your time on this earth. This is HERO, which is an acronym for something. F the police, I'm just going to call it Hero. You have a rocket pack, a few sticks of dynamite, and a laser beam. Make your way down to the bottom to rescue the random person who's trapped. Touch anything and you die. It's actually pretty fun once you get the hang of the controls. It looks similar to most of the other versions of this game, though they had a helicopter backpack instead of a rocket pack. That's dumb, rocket packs are way better. Sega wins again. Here's Hang On 2. This plays just like the Master System version of Hang On, only slightly broken in comparison. Your motorcycle doesn't stay centered on screen when you move, so the controls feel slippery. Everything is also much choppier, and the road itself is drawn by someone who doesn't know what perspective is. Still, after a few minutes I adapted to the controls and was able to do pretty well for myself. Supposedly, this is the sequel to the Master System Hang On, which explains the similarities. The main difference here is that music plays while you race, which is pretty cool. This music was actually in the Master System game, but it's unused for some stupid reason. All of the other music is identical to the Master System game. Home Mahjong. Oh hell yeah, now you can finally play Mahjong at home! It's Mahjong though, so who cares? However, this one came with a piece of plastic you could attach to your TV to prevent the other player from seeing your pieces. That's as interesting as it gets. Hustle Chew Me is a weird game by Compile. You control a mouse who sets out to get all of the food in a level and then make your way back to the doorway where you began the stage. You can jump forward and also shoot something which kills most but not all of the enemies. It's a neat idea that's fun for a few minutes. The music is absolutely atrocious though, which is unusual for a Compile game. Hypersports is a Sega port of a Konami game. It's like track and field, except totally not track and field. Compete in different events where you get 3 attempts at each. I eventually figured out the diving, but it took several minutes. This next event is even tougher, and if you fail, you have to start over. This is a game that could really use some continues. Hypersports 2 is the sequel and only released in Taiwan. 3 new events here. The skeet shooting was crazy when I first started. I understand how it works, but it really felt chaotic. By the 3rd attempt on my first game, I had it mastered though. The archery segment is a bit tougher. Sadly, there still aren't any continues, but this one seems more doable. I like this one better than part 1. Kings Valley is another Taiwan exclusive game and it requires the Daji RAM expansion. Basically, you run around collecting treasures. Once you get them all, you can unlock the door to go to the next level. You can grab a sword to toss at enemies, or a pick to dig through some areas. If you die, everything gets reset, so making progress is tough. I like the idea, but perhaps that extra 8K of memory could have gone towards remembering the treasures I've already collected and the holes I've already dug. I gotta remember how primitive everything was back then though. Nightmare is originally from Konami, and the unlicensed SG-1000 version only saw release in Taiwan. This also requires the Daji RAM adapter. It's a vertical shooter where you play as a knight. You can uncover various chess pieces by shooting the question mark boxes, and these can do various things for you like destroy all on-screen enemies. The power-ups are interesting as well. You can amplify your shot, become invisible for a short time, and even invincible. You can even stop time to destroy everything on screen. Fortunately, there are boss encounters that help keep things interesting. Ultimately, the game feels very slow thanks to the scrolling. Here's yet another unlicensed Taiwan exclusive for the SG-1000, The Legend of Kage. This version is extremely choppy, which means it's also insanely laggy. I couldn't get the first stage to end. The enemies just kept appearing. They're also pretty cheap, as I got killed right after my super attack ended, and there was absolutely no way to avoid it. The Daji RAM extension doesn't help make this game very playable. Here's Load Runner. Not Championship Load Runner, just Load Runner. This is the one that the losers play. I must be a loser myself because I like this version more than the Championship Edition. Not that I actually like it, mind you. Maybe if I were 70 years old, I might appreciate it a bit more. Loretta no Shouzu, or Portrait of Loretta, is a point-and-click Sherlock Holmes game. It was also the final game released for the SG-1000, coming out in 1987. It's also the largest game for the console, clocking in at a whopping or 128 kilobytes. It was packaged as a Mark III game, but it doesn't use any of that console's more advanced features, as you can clearly see here. This game is pretty much unplayable unless you know some Japanese. Here's Magical Kid Whiz. This is another Taiwanese game that needs the Daji RAM expansion. It's a platformer where you shoot and collect icons. In fact, the overall gameplay is kind of confusing. I feel bad for the person who is in charge of hiring the guy who did the music. They probably feel like their money was completely wasted, and it was. The music makes it nearly impossible to concentrate on playing this choppy-ass game. Magical Tree was ported without a license to the SG-1000 in Taiwan. This was originally a Konami arcade game. Basically, you need to climb this tree and get as high as you can while collecting things for points. Be careful of the enemies though, because all they want to do is make you fall. This one's pretty simple and it's even kind of fun. I recommend trying it out at least once. Here's Mahjong. Just Mahjong, not home Mahjong or anything like that. All this is super basic Mahjong. The end. Monaco GP is Sega's port of their own arcade game. Race as far up as you can trying to get the high score. If you press a button, you kind of flip around, which allows you to go through obstacles like other cars. The scrolling is decently smooth in this one. It's actually fun for a few minutes, but it's not quite as good as Super Monaco GP in the arcades or even on the Genesis. There's really no excuse for that. Here's N-Sub by Sega. The gameplay can best be described as a cross between IREM's In the Hunt and Sega's own Poseidon Wars 3D for the Master System. This one is based on a 1980 arcade game though. Sega has multiple submarine-based games. I mean, they love submarines. This one lets you fire horizontally and vertically, and well, you can basically see exactly what the game is. Slow, but kind of fun. Yeah, the sound is a touch annoying. Here's a port of Ninja Princess from Sega. This version actually plays pretty well, all things considered. One button shoots straight ahead no matter which way you face, and the other button shoots in the direction that you're running. Press them both together to disappear for a second to avoid enemy projectiles. The main problem is the shoddy colors can make some of these projectiles rather difficult to see. The screen scrolls in steps rather than continuously. Still, not a bad game at all for the SG-1000. Of course, the Ninja on the Master System absolutely destroys it. This is Okamoto Ayako no Match Play Golf for the Othello Multivision. This one is interesting due to its pseudo 3D view. Make no mistake though, no polygons are used here. Neither is any well-designed gameplay. I suppose it might be a bit easier if I could read Japanese, but no matter what, your shots are terribly difficult to control. I really can't recommend this to anyone. Still, it's way better than Champion Golf. Here's Orgus. This is a horizontal shooter where you fly as a big mech. You can hold the button down for automatic fire. The other button transforms you into a jet or a spaceship or something like that. The screen scrolls faster and you have to press the button each time you fire. However, you're also a smaller target for the enemies to hit. I like how there's some attempt made at parallax scrolling, and honestly the choppiness isn't too offensive. Well, until you get here, that is. Yikes! Not bad, but not very exciting either. Othello is a tile flipping game. Could this be for the Othello Multivision? I wonder. It's easy to figure out the rules just by playing it once, though you'll probably lose in the process. You place a tile down and flip over the opposite ones between your new tile and the one that's already on the board. Your goal is to have more tiles on the board than your opponent once it fills up. Not awful, I guess, and that's really all I have to say about Othello. By the way, Othello is built into the Othello Multivision, or Multivision if you want to say it that way. Neither is incorrect, and neither is incorrect as well. But it was also released on cartridge for SG-1000 owners. Anyway, that's 57 games down and the rest to go. Let's finish this up. Here's Pac-Car by Sega. This is a Pac-Man clone, plain and simple. Get it? Pac-Car, half Pac-Man, half car? Okay, moving on. As you collect the dots, the enemies will sometimes drop big dots, which you can then collect and eat the enemies for a bit. If you try to go backwards on the road, you'll go into a reverse and therefore move more slowly. Also, some of the tracks are bridges over others. There only seems to be 2 different screens, but it does get more difficult with more enemy cars. Give it a go if you like Pac-Man as well as extreme racing action. This is Pachinko. Launch balls to win points or other balls, I guess. I lost interest after about 3 seconds, but supposedly they go absolutely crazy over this in Japan. Ah yes, Pachinko 2. Because there needs to be more of this crap. This time you have 3 boards. If your needs are extremely simple, pick this one up. Pipples is another game only released in Taiwan. And yes, it needs the RAM expansion as well. You're a dude who can shoot up and down and hop to the left and right. Murder the enemies while collecting items for points. It's a long ways to the top. Once you get there, you can choose your path, which is pretty cool. It can sometimes be tough to avoid the enemies, but all in all, I've got to say that this is kind of fun. The scrolling is smooth as well. Thank goodness for that massive amount of memory. Here's Pitfall 2: The Lost Caverns. This is more like the original Pitfall and not like the other Pitfall 2 called The Mayan Adventure, which showed up on the 16-bit platforms. It's kind of crazy that there are 2 Pitfall 2s. Anyway, touch anything, even water, and you die immediately. The collision detection is dialed up to 11. I've never really been a big fan of the first Pitfall, and this one doesn't win me over either. This one is called Pop Flamer. The idea is to pop all of the balloons by walking over them. You can also breathe fire. The control in this one sucks, and it's difficult to avoid the enemies in time. Also, the sound is annoying. If you like games that could have used 30 more seconds in the design process, give this one a go. Here's Q*bert. This was made for the Othello Multivision. This one plays surprisingly well. No control shenanigans here like the NES version. Just press the direction you want to go. That's how it should be, and it moves pretty briskly. The audio and visual presentation leaves a lot to be desired, of course, but I don't think you could expect much more from this port. Rally X is another unlicensed Taiwanese port. Race your car around to collect all of the flags in a level. Be sure to avoid the enemy cars who want nothing more than to crash right into you. You also have to contend with a few boulders in the road here and there. The extra RAM attachment helps this one scroll smoothly both horizontally and vertically, which is amazing for the console. As a game, it's decent. Road Fighter is yet another Taiwanese port that needs the extra RAM. It looks like Spy Hunter, but it certainly doesn't play like it. You drive the world's most fragile and least fuel-efficient car from point A to point B. You start with a full tank, but it'll be empty in less than a minute. Collecting the heart icons helps restore some fuel. If you crash into the other cars or the side of the road, you'll still lose fuel even though you're not moving. You might want to patch up the hole in your tank. Honestly though, it's kind of fun, but you really need to turn the sound off for this one. Here's Rock and Bolt, which was originally from Activision. There are several sliding platforms that you need to bolt in place. The platforms then stop moving. If you trap yourself, you can undo some bolts and get them moving again. Bolt them all to go to the next level, which looks exactly the same. I found this one pretty boring personally, though I do give them kudos for the concept. This is Safari Hunting from Sega. This one is also known as Tranquilizer Gun in the arcade. Get out of your trunk and tranquilize any of the animals that you see. They'll remain tranked for about 30 seconds. Use this time to drive your truck counterclockwise around the screen to pick them up. If they're not on the outside of the screen where your truck is, you'll need to move them there. This is an okay game, but I like the revamped version on the PS2 Sega Ages collection a lot more. Here's Safari Race. Ooh, this is gonna be like Sega Rally, I bet. Yeah, no. You race along the track avoiding all of the wildlife that are making a beeline towards the road and you. Animals love doing this because they're stupid and not smart like people. If you get hit, you lose a tire and you have 4 spare tires. You also have to watch your fuel. Fortunately, there's a gas station to refill every few hundred meters, just like in the real Safari. The hardest part is stopping to refuel. This might have been a fun game, but worrying about your fuel makes it more annoying than anything. At least the scrolling of the mountains on the horizon is really smooth when it gets up to speed. This is San Nin Mahjong, also known as 3 Nin Mahjong, because 3 is San in Japanese. Anyway, it looks and sounds a hair better than Home Mahjong. Other than that, it's just another Mahjong game, who cares? This is Serizawa Hachidan no Tsumi Hyugi. That's a mouthful. This appears to be a Japanese tile-based game that I have no clue whatsoever how to play. Pretty exciting stuff. This one's called Shinyashin Toru-kun, sometimes known as Mikey. It's originally an arcade game from Konami. Your goal in this scene is to bump the students out of their chairs to collect the white hearts while the teacher chases you. While this is happening, A Hard Day's Night is playing for some reason. The teacher is really on your ass and you barely have time to do anything. Sometimes you can actually sit and the teacher will calm the hell down, but the controls to do this seem random. In fact, the controls in this game are awful. If you get caught, you have to start over and nothing you collected remains collected. F you, Konami. I'd pass on this game. It's too bad because it has potential. Sinbad Mystery is a weird take on Pac-Man. Roam the maze and collect all of the question marks. Also, avoid the wizards and whatnot. You can dig holes, but this doesn't seem to accomplish much. Maybe you can roll these boulders in there, but I don't know, I'm not really concerned about it. Anyway, after you collect all of the question marks, a treasure appears somewhere for you to grab. Do so and you win the level. For some reason, there's a map on the right side of the screen, which is completely useless. I mean, I can see everything already. Not sure why that exists. The way your character wiggles makes it feel like he's hard to control. I often found myself pressing a direction and him just not going that way. I'd rather play Pac-Man. Here's Saukoban. This is a puzzle game just like Boxel on the Game Boy or Shove It on the Genesis. Push the boxes onto the dots. I've never liked any incarnation of this game, so no thank you. Space Armor is a very primitive vertical shooter. This Othello Multivision title has you have a main shot for airborne targets as well as reticle to fire on ground targets. Not much going on here. Every time you fire your weapon, the music cuts out, but that's honestly a blessing in this case. Space Invaders. What can I say? It's Space Invaders. It fits well on the console, I guess. Now you can finally play this brilliant masterpiece at home. Here's Space Mountain for the Othello Multivision. Just like the Space Mountain roller coaster at Disneyland, you pilot an X-Wing fighter and shoot down TIE fighters with slow and inaccurate controls. Then you fly into the Death Star trench where the controls no longer work and you can't avoid things coming at you. Man, it feels like I'm 6 years old again, which was the last time I visited a Walt Disney location. And I'm fine with that because I can just relive the memory from the comfort of my own home with this turd. This is Space Slalom. Pilot the space shuttle through gates while avoiding obstacles in this tiny 8 kilobit game. Be careful not to hit the rings. Gah, that can't be good for the shuttle. Guess I'll probably burn up on re-entry. It takes a few seconds to truly be able to master the controls, but if you can stick with the game that long, you're good. Once you do, even the hardest difficulties are super easy. That's it, that's Space Slalom. Here's Star Force. This is a vertical shooter that reminds me a bit of Astro Warrior on the Master System. The jerky backgrounds here are really distracting. You can collect little power-ups that don't seem to do much of anything. You can also collect huge power-ups, look at this. Oops, I guess that wasn't a power-up. It's a little bit too choppy for my taste, honestly. This one's called Starjacker. You start out with 4 ships and all of them can shoot. If one of them gets hit, you lose it for the rest of the round. As a result, your firepower slightly decreases. If you lose all of your ships, it's game over. If you can beat the round, you can get a ship back. I like how when you beat a round, your ship gets huge and blocky, just like the Super Nintendo does when it enlarges things. Absolutely amazing. Not a bad little game. Oh look, here's Star Soldier. This is an unlicensed Taiwanese port that requires the RAM expansion. I've got to say though that honestly, this isn't half bad. It's a lot better than I thought it would be. Yes, it's choppy, but it isn't as distracting as Star Force. Even the music is pretty good considering the hardware. I wish there were more variety in the stages though. Super Tank! More like Super Awkward Tank. Move your tank around and kill the enemies while attempting to remain in the realm of the living. That's a tall order though, as your tank is not only slow and clunky, but difficult to hit enemies when you fire. If you press both buttons simultaneously, you can launch a big missile for massive damage. It doesn't seem to work on the bosses though. This one could be better, even for its time. This is Tank Battalion, a Taiwanese game that requires the memory expansion. This one plays a lot like Combat on the Atari 2600. Shoot all of the tanks while defending your flashing symbol at the bottom center of the screen. Both you and the enemy can break down walls with a few shots. This one is simple and entertaining. It's also light years more fun than Super Tank. Here's Twinbee. This is an unlicensed conversion of the MSX game only released in Taiwan. And yes, it needs the dodgy RAM expansion, though you'd never be able to tell by playing it. This is a rather poor representation of the arcade game with inconsistent collision detection. The music kinda tries though, otherwise it's just a ghetto version of Twinbee. Wonder Boy made it to the SG-1000 the same year as the arcade release. This isn't a good conversion at all. It's extremely choppy, there's zero momentum which makes the control feel weird, the jump and attack buttons are reversed, and it's incredibly slow. The sound effects are the same as the Master System version, but the music here is all new stuff, none of it being any good. Wonder Boy has green hair here though, which he'd have again in Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap for some reason. This one's called Yamato. You're blasting other ships, submarines, and even planes flying around. At first I thought you were simply a speedboat that had a big issue with other boats and things that were in the water. That would have been pretty awesome. But if you look closely, you can tell it's the front of a battleship that's on the bottom of the screen. That makes it a little bit more run-of-the-mill. This one's not particularly exciting, though maybe it helps someone learn to code. Here's an unlicensed port of Yai-R Kung Fu 2 for Taiwan. Yes, it needs the extra memory. Your goal in this one is to defeat the children that are flying at you and work your way to the left. Then you fight the boss. Maybe he was throwing the children at you? Beating him is easier said than done as the controls are pretty awful. You start out with 10 lives and I lost interest in playing this one before I even ran out of lives. Ah yes, good old Zaxxon. Fly your ship through the enemy base in this isometric shooter ported from Sega's own arcade game. You also have to worry about your height to clear obstacles. You use up fuel quickly and can blast fuel drums to replenish it. At least this version has music, unlike the ColecoVision version. Still, Zaxxon 3D on the Master System will always be the best Zaxxon game, and that is not a huge compliment. Zippy Race, originally from IREM. This starts out as an overhead view racing game where you're on a motorcycle racing against cars who are all trying to hit you. You also need to avoid puddles and other hazards. Not only that, but you don't have a lot of fuel, so you'll have to pick up some gas. Eventually, it'll switch to a 3D type view to spice things up. Still, this one just isn't very interesting, and the annoying music doesn't help. Finally, Zoom 909 is a port of one of Sega's earlier arcade games. It's known in some regions as Buck Rogers, Planet of Zoom. It's also one of the more ambitious games on the SG-1000 here. You start out by flying in a Death Star-like trench. Then, you're in a wider area shooting down enemies. Then, you move to an overhead free-roaming view with lots of stuff on screen at once. After that, you fight the boss. Then you do it all again. You also need to worry about fuel, which seems to be a big thing in games from this era. You can die as much as you want, but when your fuel runs out, it's game over. Everything here moves incredibly smooth for the system, not a hint of choppiness anywhere really, except for maybe the boss. Even the free-roaming overhead view scrolls smoothly in all 8 directions. Seriously, this is mind-blowing for this console. They even devote some CPU to play music during the game. It really is the total package. It's pretty fun as well, and I recommend playing this one for sure. And there you go, that's the SG-1000 for you. I don't think the majority of the world was really missing out on much. Most of these games are really only fun for a few minutes, but I guess that was the mindset back then. And before you start typing your comment about how lame all these games are, yes, I know, everybody knows. Still, it's interesting to see how Sega begun their journey into people's homes. This episode is for people who can appreciate history. So I've got to be frank and say that I'm glad that my first experience with Sega wasn't with the SG-1000. Anyway, what do you think of the SG-1000? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. Well, I got that all in one take.
Hello, friends. Do you want the latest in luxury entertainment? Then you want the SG-1000 computer video game from Sega. That's right, it's the SG-1000 from Sega, and it plays all of your favorite computer games, like Starjacker. Pilot a spaceship from the future to defeat the evil enemy. Oh no, my enemy's got the best of me. I'll have to give it another go, see? That's right, friends. Starjacker on the SG-1000 computer video game will keep you coming back for more. More death, that is, because I can't survive very long in this piece of shit. Get the SG-1000 computer video game from Sega. Live the future today.